Good morning, all. I know it's a early morning relatively for a Saturday, so I will not bore you too much with technicalities and getting into jargons too much. But I will try to keep it bit simple and business oriented, not technology oriented. To begin with, this cybersecurity, which we have been hearing a lot during these recent days, what it really means for an internal auditor or a statutory auditor. So, when you get into an organization as an auditor, what it really means for you is what I am trying to speak out today, rather than talking on all these phishing, and all. So, we will get into the basics first. The auditor's responsibility starts with understanding whether that the management is really serious about security, right? So every company has a security policy, environment policy, quality policy, and everything. Policies are fine, but are they really serious about it? So right from the tone of the top management, whether it is visible, right from the CEO till the last person in the organization, are they really serious about security? When I say security as a whole, it could be cyber security or IT security or even physical security. Many companies have very stringent physical securities. You can't even get in that easily. They will mask your mobile camera, everything, but they might be missing out on key IT securities, right? So at the end of the day, when the tone of the top management is really serious about security, that's what we are going to look at more from an audit standpoint. Now, where we are vulnerable. So these days, as you know, like the most vulnerable, be it in terms of discipline or be it in terms of controls or be it in terms of exposing yourself to the outside world. So obviously, like we are vulnerable on 3-4 areas. I will not get into every line of it, so don't worry about getting into the textual part of it. We will catch only the key highlights of every slide. So social engineering, obviously everywhere we are very vulnerable and sensitive, and we are open to attack from the social or media websites and other apps which we are using probably every hour we are getting into something new. So the social engineering is one area. Known vulnerabilities. This is slightly a technical point. Still, I will put it in a slightly personal front. Whether your laptop or PC is updated with the latest patches, so there itself you are very vulnerable. So known vulnerabilities, we know very well that these areas, whether you upgraded to the latest patch in your ERP or even in your laptop or even in your mobile. So this is another area which is under your control. Okay, the first two, if you could see the footer, it is very clearly mentioned that these are all something which is controllable, which is in your circle of influence, not a circle of concern. Third, of course, it's uncontrollable. It's like SARS-CoV, which none of us expected, except some who would have done that. But other than that, nobody would have expected. So it's like zero-day attack is nothing but like which is completely uncontrollable or unexpected. This happens not only to individuals but also to organizations. I actually just generally tell my team regarding security. I think I should have told this before the first slide. An analogy which will be very useful for you to remember this entire deck is like this. It's like you are running on a highway, you are trying to reach a particular destiny just to cover 20,000 steps or just to reach somewhere. The platform or the highway is your platform or the technical platform, your ERP, the entire environment or ecosystem in which your company works, and you simply fall down the side. The point is like you fall down, how far you have fallen down is one. Second, how fast you come back to the highway is the whole crux of this, and with least damages or hurts. Okay, so that is the whole purpose of implementing a security program. How fast every large giant has gone through these security attacks. Almost like every minute, as you know, thousands of new viruses are created willfully just for ransomware or just for attacking your business. So every organization goes through this. How far you are vulnerable, how far you are secured, how you get back to your highway very quickly, with the least damages. That's the whole crux of it. That's where zero-day attack is something which you don't expect at all, which might happen to anybody, but how quickly you recover back and come back to the business as usual. So that is the crux of it. Supply chain attacks, again, like, like the third party integration is also something like you connect with your bankers. Again, I am taking a personal example, like you have all the applications in your mobile and you connect with so many stakeholders, be it bankers or your stock agents or anybody for that matter. How far you are secured against all those third party stakeholders? That's another area which is again controllable. You can at least simply like uninstall the app, right? So bare minimum. Now, very quickly, this is slightly from a management standpoint. Don't worry about all the jargons or all the things over here. We can classify this entire thing. Even by reading, most of them are self-explanatory. The crux of this entire slide is whether it is controllable by the management, or when implementing these controls, it becomes controllable. So, or it is completely not controllable. So, any of these topics can fall into these two categories, whether it is completely uncontrollable, or when you implement certain controls, you will be able to control these risks, or you will be able to implement these. So that's how you can, I will just take one or two examples over here. So the incident response readiness, for example, this is what I mentioned over here. How far you are able to respond to any incident which happens to you, which you may fall down the sideway, as I was mentioning the highway example, whether by yourself or somebody pushes you in case of a malware or ransomware. So how far you are able to respond to how quickly. Some companies respond within even less than an hour. Okay, so that becomes very, very strong for a company to recover, at least to halt their operations, see what is happening and how quickly you respond to that, what is happening. Okay, so any of these examples, and based on the legends, there is another parameter to this, whether it is a high degree risk or a lesser degree, or there is no major risk over there, but something which you need to proactively take. For example, first one, information asset management. Technically there is no risk. You have bought all those assets. As an auditor, you go and verify physically all the laptops are a certain amount of, you just randomly pick across locations and verify that. There is no risk quickly to attach to that. But the point is, like, you need to take proactive steps so that it doesn't become a lesser degree risk or a high degree risk at a later point in time. So the proactive areas is another major challenge most of the organizations face. They don't venture into it proactively. Okay, so this will give a very, very quick glimpse of what an internal auditor or a statutory auditor can do. This is one good slide, of course, lot of text, but I will just highlight the critical topic. 1 to 4 over here are basically within the control domain. So whatever can be controlled by the management or whatever can be very quickly implemented, okay, even if it is not implemented already, we will be able to implement quickly and reap the benefits. So for example, let us take 1 or 2 examples over here. The periodic vulnerability scan. So we all would have gone through this at a very critical meeting when things are going on and you are at midst of a hectic argument. Your laptop will start a vulnerability scan. Okay, we all would have gone through this, and it will ask you the most insensitive question whether you want to restart your laptop now. Okay, when you are especially during your appraisal when it is happening. So, but from a technical or security standpoint, definitely these vulnerability scans are something which you can't avoid, you shouldn't avoid. Maybe you can schedule it properly, but the point is, like, these are something mandatory, like health checkup, right? So vulnerability scans are something which is under the management control, but which we should do it very periodically. And like a mock drill for a fire security, this can happen for unscheduled scans also. So this is one area. Just to give an example of one of the controls, what the management can implement to mitigate the controls risks much in advance. Similarly, if you take endpoint security is slightly a technical term, but this is probably like how your points of network and all your infrastructure are connected over a network, and how much security you have implemented over all these infrastructure and hardware. For example, like it could be a high risk, as you could see in the red towards the end. The last three controls, which are primarily slightly out of the control of the management, but management should strive, auditors should continuously insist, not only like suggest or assure, but continuously insist as an internal or statutory auditor that these controls need to be put in place. Nowadays we are very clear, like especially after the advent of IFCR for very mandatorily in India. So these controls are definitely looked into not only by the statutory auditors but also by consultants very rigorously. But still, the control, if it is not implemented, will ultimately lead to material weaknesses, as we technically call in our financial terms. It will end up in material weaknesses which will definitely impact your financial statements. We can understand, like if I don't put a security control in my hardware, how is it going to impact my financial statements? Very quickly, like somebody can, like very recent example, one of the associated organizations of ours, a person who got into the network using a vendor's email ID. Okay, so one of the vendors who supply a particular component to us, he had inadvertently shared his ID and password to somebody, and that person has gotten into the email, gotten into the network, and he was continuously raising invoices and also to some extent got advances also. So it is not that like nothing is connected over here, like apparently it may not be connected, but everything is connected finally, and obviously as an internal auditor or a statutory auditor, you will be forced to look into all these controls at some point in time during the course of your audit. Key regulations, again back to books. So some of them you would have definitely gone through already. SEBI is very, from the CSR of like currently all the framework relating to cyber resilience. So now it is very stringent, and also like now the I would say like the being packets, different packets. IT is a separate packet, security is a separate one, management is, finance is. Now as much as possible these regulations now trying to break all those barriers and packets and try to bring the dependency between each of these packets. For example, the recent thing with the NEFRA, the National Financial Reporting Authority's recommendations and also mandate regulations, has broken all the like barriers between all these. Like IT cannot stand anymore separate from the management. Management cannot be without IT security. Now we are breaking all these packets and departments, and it's becoming more and more a holistic process-driven organizations now. As you know, like the senior gentleman, Paul, who introduced, like he was talking about processes, business processes and strategic initiatives. See, putting the processes at the right place, as we saw in the earlier one, currently you don't have a risk at all on that. But if you put the right processes proactively, obviously, and whatever is recommended by all these regulations today will become a mandate very soon. Okay, so it's going to be hardly maybe couple of years or 4 or 5 years, but nobody thought ICFR will be mandatory in India. In 2005-06, when we were audited by one of the big 4 firms at that time, when they were recommending, like based on SOX compliance, like you need to get into all the ICFR recommendations, at least put them recommendatory, put some controls over them. None of the people thought that it will come mandatory in India. And with the Companies Act 2013, when it came really hard on 2015, the entire audit committee was in jittery. So what are we doing? So most of the companies, the tone of the top management totally changed from a reactive approach to a proactive approach. So that's where all these regulations really help. This is one crux. this alone I will just pause for a moment for you to just see, like not necessarily to read through the entire thing, but whether the R&R, this we discussed in the beginning, whether the roles and responsibilities percolate at every level, right from the CEO. That's why I repeat this phrase, tone of the top management, for the 10th time probably in this speech, but still this is something very, very critical, because the inner engineering is what every employee in the organization, till the CEO or even higher, need to have that particular inner engineering to be security sensitive. Otherwise, like, this is not going to happen. Like we usually jokingly say, like maybe a decade ago, like people will be frisking you, the security will be frisking you when you go out or come in, but he will not see what you are carrying on your head. Okay, so like the problem is, like even if you are carrying an entire laptop on your head, the security will simply frisk you like this and send you out. So whether the security sensitization happens right from CEO to the last person on the organization, this is one question the auditors must ask, and obviously you can't ask it directly. You have to see whether that is happening in the organization. You should have that feel. Secondly, like, do the business leaders understand that most valuable assets and the level of cyber security they are accepting? So the assets is today, like as you know very well, like assets are not something like land, building, plant and machinery, like gone are those days. Those are all very well accounted, documented and disclosed. But what is not disclosed? Information assets. Tomorrow some very knowledgeable subject matter expert of your organization suddenly leaves. So he carries not only like his full and final settlement, finally he carries something, a crux of his 20 years or 30 years of knowledge, which you can't build overnight. So he is going to take away that, and how are you going to ensure that that information asset is somehow de-risked while he leaves? Okay, so that sensitization the leaders need to have. Technology solutions, which is very self-explanatory, and but here we need to keep the privacy also in mind. Like the organization cannot ask everything, whatever is there in your laptop, including some things which you are slightly allowed to keep a privacy over there. We all know about the GDPR regulations, especially with Europe. And other countries also, they adopt the same framework in slightly in a different manner. But the general data protection rights or regulations, which is something very, very sensitive. Like even if you go to various countries, most of the countries do not allow you to get other than the name of the customer. They don't even allow you to get the email ID or phone numbers or anything like that. When that is at one end, other end you need to have a security of all your information assets. How are you trying to balance, or how are you able to achieve the balance? That's one critical topic, and I will just take the most interesting one, the last but two, how the business incentivizes. Okay, this is one interesting topic which most of the organizations now do. They conduct training programs, they conduct security awareness sessions, so many things. But I honestly know, like none of us in this hall, none of the organizations incentivizes people who are security freaks. Okay, we don't get any incentive. Even if I am very tightly abiding by all the rules and regulations of my organizations, I don't get incentivized. But some organizations have started thinking in these lines, how to incentivize your people who are actually falling in line with all your controls and regulations. This is a very difficult topic to do, because doing what is required is not enough. So how you go the extra mile to ensure that the security controls are in place, how you sensitize your co-workers, how you sensitize your team. It's not something that is easy, but giving incentives to people who go the extra mile is something which we need to think through. As auditors, it's not our job to tell the management, go and reward somebody. But the point is, like, inculcating this culture to the organization, to the board, to the CEO is something which auditors can always do. We come to the last portion, culture awareness and training. Security needs to become a culture, which we all know. We are getting more and more secure with respect to our information assets, and especially with respect to our digital assets, including our mobile, we are becoming more and more aware and secure. But the point is, as an organization, it is never enough. I usually tell, because I handle the strategy VTRP, we call a vision to reality plan. So organizations have a vision and how to bring that to reality. One of the parameters will be on the information security program, as you know. And the information security program obviously will end up in red every year. So it will not reach its objectives. Okay, none of the years information security programs will reach its best of objectives or KRAs or KPIs, whatever we fixed. You know the reason why? Because whatever parameters or controls you plan and fix during the beginning of the year, by the time you reach the end of the year, you would have done 100%, but you would have reached 90%. So, because like 10% new would have come every year, as we discussed, like every minute, hundreds of new attacks are happening. Organizations are protecting against them. But at the end of the year, definitely you would have fallen short by 10%. So, security program is never 100% resilient. But still, organizations need to continuously thrive towards that. So the awareness and training, and this happens all through the year, and every one of you know this, but it has to carry on continuously. Data and privacy, we discussed, we should strike a balance for that. Incident response, just remember the example, how quickly you come back to the highway with the least amount of thorns in your hand. So that is the quick way to recover. Here, I will just put a couple of points from a management standpoint. Management would like to have this incident response happening without any damage to the business. I will take one live example which happened to, of course, which is slightly known to the external world, which happened to us also. The point is, like, we ensured the entire ecosystem or the IT environment and also the business environment come to a halt for 2 hours. When we went through this zero-day attack, we ensured that it's put on a halt. The entire organization just stood back, and we wanted to see what is happening. And just with 2 hours, we found out alternative rules to ensure that the business goes as usual. For the external world, nothing was visible. Of course, our auditors knew it, but still, for the external world, including bankers and dealers or end customers or suppliers, none of them were affected. So for the external world, how you quickly respond and ensure that business goes as usual, that is one very critical topic. Secondly, internally, how you quickly make every application up and running. It could be individual laptops, it could be your ERP, it could be your peripheral systems. How you quickly put an SOP and come back to normal one by one very quickly. And with a very, very strong and very powerful zero-day attack, still we came out of that and became business as usual within 12 days for a 10,000 crore company. So it's very, very important that you know how to respond to the incident. Incident will happen. May happen anytime, but it will happen to anybody or any organization. And sometimes we usually tell organizations' strengths are its weakness. Sometimes whatever has been your strength all along, you could be a people-dependent company, that could be your strength, but ultimately it might become a weakness for you. So all individuals and organizations go through this phase. How you quickly respond and come back is what is needed. Identity and access management, which we discussed slightly jokingly, but the point is all organizations implement IAM, identity and access management. Who I am and what I should know and what I shouldn't know. That's the crux of it. If I am an employee or a contract employee or a casual labor, right from there till my consultants or board member or whoever it may be, who I am is the identity. what should I know, what should I not know is my access management. So the IAM is something almost every company has started looking into these lines, and the role of auditor will be definitely to ensure that the organizations move in these lines. Security governance, architecture and operations, I put it all three together because security is a framework. Of course, you will have a central governance cell, you will have a central architecture. The architecture needs to, of course, adding to architecture, I will just put one more point. As you know, like most of us know Tally very well than any other ERP. So we don't know whether Tally ERP 9 or higher versions are actually security resilient. We don't know, right? So security is something which we need to know about smaller ERPs when we implement that. Whether we are looking into the framework repetitively, very frequently. For large ERPs or huge, very well implemented ERPs, security is inbuilt in every walk of the implementation. But when you implement smaller ERPs, when you have smaller clients or smaller organizations, how far you ensure that security is imbibed in all those areas. So this is something which most of the auditors also like either they put it onto the audit report straight away and go off, or it's like that ERP may not be able to cope up with all the security measures. Now we need to take the entire framework need to be in line with the organizations and the applications which the organizations use. Threat monitoring and detection, I gave that example, especially post-COVID, like these threats have been very frequently thought about. And again, one point is like most of the organizations now have moved from reactive mode to proactive mode. That's what we discussed short while ago. And while we do these proactive risk mitigations, this is not only at a technical standpoint, but it is at a business process also. For example, I was giving an example of a supplier. How do we ensure that an external person doesn't misuse something which ultimately affects even up to your financial statements? So this threat monitoring is like something like we have a glossary of threats. Okay, now we know like right from your SOX or the old risk mitigation frameworks till the latest ones with us. There is a glossary of threats. Whether the glossary of threats is sufficient and it's comprehensive, never. That's why your security programs never reach 100% KPIs. Because by the time you think of 100 threat mitigations, the hacker would have thought thousands. Okay, so definitely like we are always falling short, but still this detection mechanism and remediation and monitoring has to happen continuously. But do we need to put 10 people only for security? No. That is the reason why like we always recommend that it becomes a culture, so that everybody, even if your organization has only 10 people or 10,000 people, it's a culture which is imbibed in you, and like everyone takes care of their security, ultimately the organizations. Third party we discussed, like if your applications are connected to your dealers and suppliers and bankers. Bankers pose a lot of threat because we have a host-to-host connection with most of the bankers, and obviously when you make a payment directly, your file goes there, he approves, your reference number comes back into your ERP, and there is a backward and forward integration with the bankers, host to host, real time. But if they get attacked, you are attacked almost at the same time. So when you are integrating with your third parties also, we need to have the same set of resilience what you have internally. Finally, the hygiene, it's more of a summary. I will just touch base with only these four. The security policies, again for the nth time, the tone of the top management, how sensitized and how serious is the top management in implementing the policies, procedures and frameworks within the organization. Availability, you need to have sufficient capacity for remote connections to perform critical tests. Like the organizations now are not pan-India, like it's pan-globe. So now when you have a distributor in Colombia, how that person is security resilient will immediately impact you. He carries a virus to your system, then obviously you are attacked. So how much available, and vulnerability we talked a lot, like how much you are vulnerable. Not necessary that somebody pushes you from the highway, you yourself can fall off. So the vulnerability might be inbred into the organization itself, which is controllable but needs to be seen, monitored, and continuously mitigated. Finally, the access management, the IAM, we always need to remember who I am and what I should know and what I shouldn't know. Thank you very much for your patience. Have a great day. Yeah.
We have some time before we close the session. We can ask your questions, any clarifications.
I have a question. So you touched upon
Thank you. So I heard, quite a matter you shared, right, and I would say a lot more I learned today. You touched upon the material weakness for ICFR controls, right? I mean, that's the most, as anyway, any auditor will come across internal controls touching to the IT side. Now, and you also mentioned about 2005, 2006, and till today.
Yes.
So 20 years, ICFR controls, the domains, have remained pretty much static, right?
Yes.
Access, changes, operations, pretty much same controls going over again. Since this entire paradigm shift in the IT and security and cybersecurity,
Yes.
I mean, do you think that, we should put more stress on other controls as part of ICFR? And if yes, like things like detection of threat, right, and vulnerability assessment controls. So do you think there's a need to kind of have a look into the gamut of controls being tested as part of ICFR and maybe add certain other controls, keeping in mind the way we are kind of moving ahead?
Yeah, so I was using the word departmentalization or packets. Now, this applies to IT controls also. IT controls, as you know, like the IT RACM, RCM, we call it like earlier it was used to be done with order to cash, procure to pay, record to report, or period and financial reporting, or whatever you mentioned. So it was in packets, yes. Within IT controls also it was in packets. Now we have moved to a stage where all the business process controls have become very, very integrated now. We don't do it at, say for example, tax related controls or treasury related controls. We do it more from a business process control. That's one portion of it. Second, the cyber controls, yes, you are right. Still, I would say 60 to 70% has got integrated, but still some 30-40% stands very very distinct or like slightly away from the business process. Yes, you are right to some extent, but organizations are moving towards integrating the cyber controls with the business process controls. So just to take the same example, or maybe a slightly, okay, I will go to the other extent. Instead of supplier, you just take a dealer or distributor. Take Maruti for example. You have a dealer. Now if the dealer, you have put all the business processes for a lead to cash, you walk into a dealership, you are a lead, till the time they collect the money, so the entire lead to cash, they would have put all the business process controls very stringently, right from your KYC norms kind of security controls, or till the time the money is collected and properly going to the OE manufacturer. That's a business process control. Now, what if the particular dealer is pretty weak with respect to his IT's cyber risks, and he is connected to Maruti at a central domain level? Now, if he is transferring some files or something like that, and that will also happen, like I mentioned about the bankers, that will also happen everywhere. Now, I briefly touched base, but I didn't elaborate it much. Whether all your IT applications are cyber resilient, that topic every organization has started moving into. It's not something like applications stand separate, processes stand separate, IT security stands separate, cyber financial statement or material weaknesses stand. Now it's not standing separate. Now it has got integrated very well, but it's still a journey. But you are right. It was like that. It was not even process. It was functional. Like when the auditors come, like they go to treasury department, they verify everything, they come back. They go to inventory, they go to it was functional, then it became process. Now it is completely comprehensive security. That's why we term it as a security framework rather than the security framework includes your applications, including the applications which your extended stakeholders use, be it bankers or suppliers or customers. So definitely yes, the journey last 4-5 years, especially post-COVID when we all started connecting remotely, definitely this has become because before even giving work from home, now obviously like in 20 you remember everybody was tested with all the security controls. Every organization gave it very cautiously. They gave your basic SSIDs and then only moved to VPNs. Even the companies which have been giving VPNs for the last 20 years, they were moving pretty cautiously. So cyber risk along with process controls which will impact your financial statements definitely has got into a single framework right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Ashish. As an auditor, we are doing the audit based on the scope. So we create the risk trajectory and risk heat map. So how you think that we have to convert those risk heat map or risk trajectory to cyber risk quantification? So how you quantify that thing? Because risk must be quantified, like AI risk, like bias. So we don't know that it means it is not, we cannot measure that bias thing. So how you make this cyber risk quantification? What framework and what methodology you take at the time you are doing?
Well, to try to answer to some extent on that part, see the frameworks relating to SOX or all the COSO frameworks, everything gives you the matrices around that. Okay, okay, park that for a moment. But your question is very valid, and also like slightly continuing with what the earlier gentleman asked also. So basically the risk parameter, what we are using right now, doesn't have any major matrices. Okay, all the frameworks, they have a metric, and whether we are adhering to that, that's fine, be it ICFR or any other framework, obviously has matrices, and whether you are complied with that or not is something which you can always measure. But the problem here is you come across, every organization is unique, and obviously like whatever you put as a overall scope might not be comprehensive enough. We should be finding something new, and whether that risk fits into like it could be a bias or anything like that, which might come up new. How do you fit into that is something which every framework has left some space to think about. For example, the ICFR, even if you take it, certain things are very stringently given, and also definitely like it is framework driven, but it leaves certain innovation also. Like for example, the entity level controls. When you as an auditor, like when your scope is not something which is very clearly defined by ICFR or something like that, like the entity level controls give a lot of space to innovatively think and put, and also like where you talked about how to put it in the notes. Okay, notes most of the times are even like even paragraph level it is very defined, right? But always most of the auditors follow these additional notes, okay, which need not be part of your FS, but still like need not be part of your para 12B or something like that, but still like it could be an additional note. And the risk category, obviously it's left to your imagination, and you will be able to always it could be a corroboratory risk which you could have already found out as part of the process audit. So there is always scope for adding additional note onto that. You would like to add anything on that?
So hi everyone. Just to probably I'll respond to both the questions together. So I think the first question he also asked about is, what are the additional controls that are required to be, included as part of your internal control. As Rajagopal also spoke about in one of the slides, is usually the controls, if you look at, it's all about access management, backup, and change management. But in today's world, with the cyber maturity in terms of attacks that happens across the organization, there is a push that as part of your internal control program, there are other controls also required to be brought as a basic, which is the endpoint security he spoke about, which is the logging and monitoring he spoke about. I think the third one also I think he spoke about on the overall the secure coding and secure and the hardening practices as well. So these three, if you go into it, it probably will open up further controls what is required to be put in place. So over and above your access management, your backup, your change management, which is in typical internal controls that you will have as part of IT, these are some of the basic controls which are required to be brought in as on today. On the second aspect of, how do we look in from a how do I factor or how do I, probably put some value to the cyber security today? I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the SEC rules. They brought in one factor of, if a cyber incident is going to have an impact to your shareholders or an investors, to take a decision of whether, do I need to invest in a company? Or probably should I sell my shares and move out because the cyber security is pretty weak and that's going to impact the overall organization's valuation per se, right? If that is going to have an impact towards that magnitude, then that leads to the material weakness of the organization. The second aspect is, for example, you are going to IPO, right? Few days before the IPO, let's say there is going to be a huge cyber attack in your organization, and thereby, there is a ransomware that sits out on the in your door, and you have to pay them, to probably cover it up. And while you go and report to SEBI on, the various factors of how did you manage to put things into place, so that will take a step back in terms of decision of whether you want to go to IPO or defer the IPO. Right? If such cyber threats, cyber incidents are leading to such a decisions of the management reputation or the shareholders or the investors, and that is where they call that as a material weakness of the cyber related incident. While you exactly want to quantify like a variant of what is this value materiality of 1% or 0.5, it doesn't go that way, but as on today how they've classified both from India perspective and the US perspective is that any cyber incident that's going to lead to decision of hitting the reputation, shareholders and investors, that is a larger material impact to the organization which is required. There are many such companies in US also had a similar incident. That is why they also SEC also came up with its own the ways of approaching on the overall cyber incident outcome of that. I hope I answered your question. I think I also answered your question. I think we'll step out. I think quickly I'll talk in 2 seconds is that the access management backup was there in a typical internal control framework. I think Rajagopal spoke of one slide, where he brought about endpoint security. He spoke of logging and monitoring. Like there are few more controls which are required to be brought in internal control framework today as a basic. Over and above your change management, backup, etc. These are very much needs to be brought in. That's why he also elaborated and gave a good overview about that. Yeah, thank you.
And to add for the second question, like. Now, it might not be a metric driven kind of thing, like whether you are 95% or like that. But as we move on from a security standpoint, like there are more binary questions or a leading question, whether you have it yes or no, Like that, definitely like by answering your binary questions, then obviously like most of the organizations come to a conclusion or the auditors can come to a conclusion that this organization by going through these controls or implementing these controls or not having these controls, the decisions and opinions can vary based on that. Yeah.
I have one more. Okay, go on. So, as you also associated with this in your firm, so how you deal with supply chain management cyber risk? Because you know that after the SolarWind, that 2020 that attack happened. So how you deal with these type of condition when and how to find that gap as an auditor when in any organization where the supply chain related flaw is there. So how you find and what framework you will choose to?
I think the existing frameworks cover, there are the core, not only the core business processes, but also the peripheral business processes and the technologies also. As we were discussing, like it's not only your core ERP, but the ERP, or even if it is going to be maintained in Excel, what your supplier does is something which is auditable. And most of the organizations, like they do, as for example, like most of the manufacturing organizations, we like they call it as I-mark audit. Mark audit is something like MARQ, manufacturing ability, reliability and quality. Mark is something like now this mark audit has been there right from 60s or 70s. This is not something new, but now it is I-mark audit. So integrated manufacturing ability, reliability and quality audit. Now this I-mark has become completely IT oriented. So it is like, for example, when supplier audits happen or dealers audit happens, nowadays people don't go and see like whether the supplier has the sufficient flooring, whether their machines are deployed properly, or whether the power backup systems are there. These are all gone now. Most of the OEMs who verify their suppliers' readiness do not go through these basics anymore. Now these are all left to their suppliers' certification. So the suppliers say like, yeah, I am having power backup all the time. I am having a very good environment, and I am compliant with my labor laws and other things. These are not worries of OEMs anymore. Now OEMs worry more about obviously, of course, the numbers, but still like OEMs worry more on the IT part of it nowadays. So how the suppliers are IT resilient, and like for example, we share our schedules. Let us take a very basic example. I need a particular component 10,000 numbers because I am going to produce 10,000 vehicles. Now this information goes to the supplier. How far that information is sensitized, or how far that information is relevant for that particular supplier, how far he will be sharing it with the others, and what should I do from an IT standpoint, as a process standpoint, how do we share my information and statements of accounts and the KYC related documents. As I told, like the GDPR regulations for customers, like it says like don't even collect their mobile numbers. When given that kind of external stakeholders restrictions on privacy of data, how do we strike a balance with our suppliers? And to answer you, like not only it is suppliers, like as you know, like the other stakeholders, including the reporting authorities, bankers are one focus, like like they continuously bombard your ERP, right, all the time, like they are connected with your ERP, and you need to be extreme, and like it's not one bank, obviously. We will be working with at least 10 to 15 major banks, including the international ones. So obviously, like this process of auditing our suppliers or dealers or any other stakeholders who are bound to be audited by us. Obviously, there is a SOC 1 report, SOC 2 report, all those things are there. Still, what the management takes more cognizance about their IT resilience with respect to security and threats. So that is already part of the frameworks.
Yeah. Just one perspective of this question of topic, right? Supplier auditability. So usually in a supplier contract, we usually go for right to audit clauses and all, right?
Yes.
SOC 2 reports outside, right? So
no, SOC 2 is for service organizations.
Yeah, service organization also, like, but from a vendor perspective, not only from a manufacturing supplier.
Yes.
Vendor. This cloud providers currently we have, right? I mean, cloud providers, because they are very limited in number, I will not take the names, but the challenge is that which we faced, even the contract clauses are very standardized. They will not allow to put a right to audit clause. You know, it's specific. They have a one-page report, one-page format. That's what every customer has to abide by. But the challenge is when I put in my crown jewels or my data into their server systems, I don't even have a right to audit for them because they say that this is done in contract. So that's kind of a...
Yeah, many organizations leave it to the innovation of their legal department, but still the point is like we need to take, of course, I know like there is a challenge. We also have it, especially with international suppliers. Like when you import certain things, you have no right to go and audit anything over there. Almost it's like a half a page agreement. So it will look like an addendum, not even an agreement. So the point is, there needs to be, we adopt more of a self-certification process over there. So what are all the clauses you might want to go and audit, but you are not able to go and audit? We leave it to a self-certification or a certification by a third party, or as we call like auditors expert and management expert, you know that term. So like expert appointed by the auditors, like if Deloitte wants to appoint a valuer and value a particular building which is so huge independently by an expert appointed by the auditor, or the management may say like, boss, leave it, like we will appoint an expert and we will give you the valuer certificate. Similar to that, you can always do take an expert opinion from the supplier, leave it to more like a self-certified thing, and you can always rely upon that. It's not going to be like every time some well-known expert will get into falsifying that.
Just to add point to it, see, when you look at a public cloud, right, it's very difficult for the service provider to put a specific agreement. What they push is to go for a private cloud. When you go to a private cloud, it is possible you'll have a separate agreement. But I think there's a shift towards that. I think the Indian-based, the cloud providers are emerging to fit into the Indian regulatory requirement. And I think slowly it's starting to shift, but it's going to take some time. I get your point. Because even most of the RBI-related requirement, the top, the cloud providers, they're not able to adapt. And they feel that, they don't need to change also because the larger peers globally that they have. So I think it's going to shift, but it takes some more time accordingly. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question.
Yeah. So I'm Vivek. So I have one question with regard to the cyber incidents. So for example, like we had one recent one involving CrowdStrike, which had a global impact. Almost all the geographical place we had an impact. So how do you look at it? This is uncontrollable from a company perspective, and or do we say there was a material weakness? Because if you look at the impact, it was so severe. So many things came through a standstill. Like all the flights were cancelled, or so many. The impact was so huge. But do you say it is an uncontrollable, or this is what the company could have done, or can we say there was some material weakness in the controls, so which it could have been avoided or something like that?
That you will come to know unfortunately after you recover most of the times. So, but the point is like, yes, you are right. Your question is good, but answer is like may not be convincing, because like many of the things after you do the root cause analysis and you put a team or group to assess everything and put the kappa and all. But the point is like it's slightly difficult on a zero-day attack. Like that's why we classified it as uncontrollable, and we showed that as the only uncontrollable factor. Other three are primarily controllable. Now, to answer your question, what we think uncontrollable, okay, actually might have been controllable. Now, in most of these attacks, finally what happens is like you have left one window open and one laptop or one ID which has not been sufficiently patched or sufficiently upgraded with the patch. Even in our case, like we found that 2 or 3 remote location workstations are not sufficiently patched. Okay, so it could have triggered, like it's like you keep your entire bungalow very tight pakka and you left one back door open. Okay, so definitely this happens, and finally after all these things, when the root cause analysis is done and finally you come up with the report, you will find that those things are not actually exposed by those organizations. They don't tell the truth, but still like internally they know very well that you would have left 1 or 2 doors open. Okay, so it is controllable, but as I told, like KPIs in security never reaches 100%. So there could be something very, very remote. You would have done everything under your control, but there might be 1 or 2 very remote things which you would have left unattended.
Yeah, just to see from a consulting word, what we do is CloudStrike is one of the classic thing happened, right? But a lesson what all of them learned from it is that most of the companies today are completely cloud dependent. So our recommendation, what we have given is that choose whether you want to move completely to the cloud or you want to keep your critical applications on-prem. That's again a cycle that we're coming back to the old story, what we had, right? Second is a risk assessment. Very, very basic. What if the cyber risk in which you spoke about, Rajagopal spoke about in the initial slides, right? How are we cyber resilient? Something goes wrong. Forget about the Microsoft, right? So, but within your organization, something goes wrong. Are we resilient enough to quickly resume our operations? What is the impact, right? I think that area, most of the companies today have not done to a greater job. That's why even RBI also brought in one very good, the framework of GRC, governance, risk and compliance, where they said is, you need to present to the board on your BCP and DR related with all the worst case scenarios, right? And then signing it off that, that your BCP and DR is so exhaustive and comprehensive that you brought in all the worst case and figure out, where do you stand. So I think these 2-3 things, risk assessment, think about whether you want to move everything to the cloud, that one the public cloud. Third is, have you done the worst case scenario appropriately? I think if you're able to do 2 to 3, you know where you stand. Something goes wrong, you know where do you stand, right? I think these are some of the things which we are thinking about. Personally, if you ask me, I think all of us will come back to the on-prem. Like how my dad would have had his own, the fashion of the pants, and then we went for the narrow boot. Again, all of us are going back to the old style of, the fashion trend. I think my personal feel is 10 years, 12 years or 20 years down the line, again all of us will come back to the on-prem. Just a cycle goes around because of the classic, the strike that happened, right? Another 2-3 such things happens, things will start taking a U-turn. As long as things are good, it's good. But I think 20 years down the line, things may take a shift is what I personally feel. But otherwise, 2-3 things, risk assessment, worst case scenarios will help you to understand where you stand. Yeah, sorry sir, thank you.
Yeah. Only thing is like to add to Karthik's, sorry.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah, just to add to Karthik's statement, though I slightly disagree on the last point. We may come back to on-prem that I may not be. Of course, ERPs, definitely most of the companies might come back to on-prem. But the sad part is like the example I quoted was for an ERP which is on-prem for the last 30 years. Okay, so so thieves are thieves, and they can enter how much secure you are, whether you are keeping your wallet open or you are inside a safe vault. Okay, so yeah. Private cloud is secure still. Yeah. No, for that matter, like even if it is in on-prem, like that's what I mentioned. A person with 30 years experience leaves your organization. You simply get your laptop, like information assets. There's a no due process, and finally you don't know what he carries in his head. You lost something like jotting down into a document and putting it as a process. For large MNCs, that might be possible, but every organization may not have that. Yeah. Yes.
Related to third party, again, is two scenarios what we are putting on IS audit here in the file. So when we are going for the third party audit and something like that, the two challenges what we are frequently facing. One is related to integrity certificate. When we, as Karthik said, like regarding the secure coding practices or secure by design, so in so many cases the organization is not having the access to the source code. And in that case, if you are going for the source code review report or something like that one, they are not ready to provide the source code review report, or neither they are ready to provide the source code to conduct the audit by the organization. In that case, the very first solution comes like an integrity certificate. Whether being an auditor or a bank or an organization, whether we can rely upon the integrity certificate. Because one thing I want to add, in case of any cyber incident or something, maybe the legal will come into the place based upon the integrity certificate. But what about the reputational loss along with the financial loss or something it is happening? So this is the one thing. And where the right to audit clause is not there and they're straightforward denying for the audit. So what about the alternate mechanism or something to ensure our cyber security posture of the third party to ensure?
Yeah, this is very common with the startups. Okay, so primarily startups don't give you the source code and they deny the right to audit also. Currently, the legal recourse what you have is like what we discussed just before, to rely on self-certification and also this SOC 1, SOC 2, all the basic formalities alone right now is what is available for you. The integrity certification or something like that is more of a paper. Still you still run the risk of not being able to audit them. So some of the companies adopt this methodology of getting into cost factors and what you provide as these small players, what you provide them as an assignment or a particular consulting exercise, that we need to be very cautious not to give certain assignments like which will have an impact on your ICFR. So that's the only way, right now we at least we classify like that. For example, we give certain things which for right from your survey applications or your end customer applications or some feedback mechanisms or quality related topics which are not directly impacting your ICFR. All those things we go with this self-certified service providers. But others which will directly have an impact on your ICFR, for example, your supplier systems or customer dealer systems, you will not be able to give it to small players who will be denying right to audit or who will be more, you need to depend more on your legal papers rather than the reputation of the organization. You would like to add anything on that?
No, I think you added it well. I think the reputation, the right to audit clause, I think it's a push is also coming. Even some of the Indian regulatory body also have pushed to even the customer agreement that you have. They also want to include right to audit for them also. Whether it is, for example, B2B is applicable. B2C typically they won't even bother to know what is there in the agreement. I think right to audit was very good, where they started pushing all the companies to include it, be it your vendor, be it your customer. They want to include that. I think on the other reputational aspect of it, I think we spoke about from material weakness point. If that's going to have an impact, that will have a huge impact on the overall cybersecurity measure. I think due to time constraints, we'll take this up you can catch up with Rajagopal, he'll be here for some more time. So thank you, Rajagopal. Over to you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
We thank our speaker for the session we had. He has shared all his knowledge with us. From the questions, the only thing I want to add is the traditional audit audit techniques are no longer valid. So some of the questions you've asked on valuation of the risk, the return on investment on cybersecurity controls and so on, I'm reframing your questions. So you'll have to use things like sensitivity analysis, integrity of data, you have to do decision tree, or you have to do random forest. Now you can do simulation, there are lots of stuff you do, but thing is, speaking to someone outside, said they're using IIA. See, IIA is an audit tool, but if you want to use these new methods I'm talking about, you will have to, the programs are available, but they're small independent software, downloaded from GitHub or somewhere, take the tutorial on YouTube. Auditors, because they removed the maths from almost all the professional courses, and the boys who do the CA tell me, I came here because I didn't like maths. So that's the auditor's problem. From the technician's problem, he says, I took technology because I didn't like accounts. Now, fellow doesn't know accounts, one said the other guy doesn't know maths. And then we're trying to audit something. I guess we need a tool now. So we have to put all of it together. So that's, I see most of your questions are valid. You'll have to change the audit techniques. Even for data integrity, because some of the PhDs we guide, they work on this, but they are not accountants. They work for the software companies or insurance companies. They have data insurance, cyber insurance. They work there. And there's something called algorithm audits. Anybody heard of this? Okay, maybe next conference they'll do all that. So the algorithm audits and bias in algorithms, Deepak Wadhwan will ask me. So there are lots of stuff we need to learn. Other than our traditional, whatever we do now, COSO COBIT has been updated. So, whatever I'm just trying to say, that when technology moves, the auditor also moves along with it. Like today's doctors do robotic surgery, they have to do all kinds of stuff. If they don't fit, generally they're asked to leave. Okay, anyway, I'm not saying anything about that. But anyway, thank speaker for a very short notice and he spent a lot of time. They spent a lot of time with us.